Let me ground that abstract concept in the specific verified data that the federal forecast agencies are generating right now, because this is not a theoretical concern. AccuWeather's senior meteorologists, looking at this week's pattern as of the latest model runs, described severe storms targeting the middle of the country day after day from April 9th through April 14th, 6 consecutive days. A corridor of downpours and thunderstorms stretching from Texas to the Great Lakes, producing flooding and severe weather well into next week, with localized totals of 4 to 6 inches possible. The WPC's excessive rainfall discussion is already carrying a marginal risk for excessive rainfall from central eastern Texas to southeast Kansas and southwest Missouri, explicitly noting that T with limited eastward progression of the QPF footprint expected, an elevated threat for local flash flooding will persist throughout the period. Limited eastward progression. That is federal forecaster language for these storms are going to keep training over the same communities rather than moving quickly through. And the SPC has issued extended range severe weather outlooks for 4 consecutive days within this stretch, Saturday, April 11th through Tuesday, April 14th, a level of advanced forecaster confidence that is seen only a couple of times per year. 6 days, 4 of them flagged for organized, potentially significant severe weather. All of them landing in a region that has already been absorbing rounds of active weather since late March. That is the context. That is the capacity problem. And I want to spend this video walking through every dimension of it. Let me start with the communities that are already in trouble before this week even begins, because they need to be named and they need to be heard. The Great Lakes region, Michigan and Wisconsin specifically, has been dealing with ongoing power outages and flooding from the late March and early April active weather stretch. The NWS documentation from that period confirmed rainfall totals of 3 to 6 inches across portions of northern Indiana in just 5 days. The Wisconsin Emergency Management Division documented historic flooding in southeast Wisconsin that caused significant property damage, power outages, numerous road closures, emergency evacuations, and multiple swiftwater rescues. Michigan has been cycling through rounds of storm damage and power restoration since the March blizzard, with ongoing flooding concerns in many counties. These are not communities starting this week from a clean slate. They are communities that are already running their emergency management operations at elevated tempo, already have utility crews deployed from the previous event, already have roads that were damaged or closed before this week's storms added anything on top of them. And the week 2 signal from the CPC, that second round of Lee's cyclogenesis after the week 1 system, means the recovery window that those communities are counting on after this. Weekend does not come when they think it is coming. It comes later and shorter, and with less recovery capacity available than they currently expect. I need the emergency managers, the utility supervisors, the road department directors, the school principals, the hospital administrators, and the ordinary citizens in Michigan and Wisconsin right now to understand that. They need to plan for this week as a continuation of a months-long high-tempo period, not as an isolated event that is going to be over by Wednesday. Now, let me talk about the hazards themselves, starting with the one that I think is most consistently underestimated in terms of its community impact, and that is the flash flooding. AccuWeather is forecasting 1 to 4 inches of rain from Texas to Michigan over the course of this week, with localized totals of 4 to 6 inches. The WPC is specifically flagging the training pattern. Storms repeatedly developing in the same location and moving in the same direction, stacking rainfall on top of rainfall, as the mechanism that can push localized totals well beyond what any individual storm would produce. In urban areas, that kind of rainfall in a compressed time window overwhelms storm drainage systems within minutes. Catch basins fill, streets become rivers, underpasses flood from both ends. Vehicles get trapped in moving water because they did not see the flash flooding develop and they did not turn around in time. And in rural areas, creeks that were already elevated from the previous rounds of storms jump their banks onto farm tracks and county roads that do not have the same infrastructure monitoring that urban systems have. A family in a rural Oklahoma County or a community in western Arkansas may not know the road they routinely use to get to the hospital has been washed out until they are trying to drive it. That is the capacity problem in rural flash flooding. Not that people are unaware that storms are happening, but that the drainage information, the road closure information, and the water depth information simply is not available at the granularity and the speed that would allow every driver to make safe decisions every time. This week, in the training rainfall environment the models are producing, I need every person in the primary corridor, from Texas through Oklahoma and Arkansas, to treat every road crossing with standing or moving water as a closed road, every single one. Because this week, the infrastructure is not going to be able to keep up with the reporting. And you cannot assume that an absence of a road closure sign means the road is safe. The tornado threat this week is real, and it extends across multiple days rather than concentrating in a single peak window. and that geographic and temporal spread creates a specific problem for warning systems and for community readiness. Saturday starts the sequence with scattered severe thunderstorm potential across West Texas and eastern New Mexico, organized enough to produce large hail and damaging gusts, but not the peak of the week. Sunday escalates, bringing supercell potential from north central Texas through Oklahoma and into Kansas, with a legitimate tornado threat if morning convective debris clears in time to allow afternoon destabilization. Monday expands the corridor dramatically. AccuWeather's breakdown shows the full spectrum of severe weather possible from parts of central Texas all the way to southern Minnesota, central Wisconsin, and the Chicago area of Illinois on Monday alone. And Tuesday, which the SPC has already flagged as a day where an upgrade is possible once confidence increases on the ejecting trough timing, is the day where the most concentrated, potentially violent supercell activity is expected across the southern and central plains. The problem with a tornado threat that is active across 4 separate days across a 12-state corridor is the same capacity problem I described at the beginning of this video, but applied specifically to warning systems. National Weather Service offices in every state from Texas to Michigan are going to be in elevated operational mode simultaneously for the better part of a week. Storm spotters and chasers, who are crucial to the real-time warning process, are going to be fatigued by midweek. Emergency managers who brief their communities on threat levels are going to be issuing consecutive days of elevated warnings, and the research on community response to consecutive day threats is clear. Compliance drops with each successive warning day because people begin to normalize the threat and let their vigilance fall. I am telling you this not to criticize the warning system. It is remarkable, and it saves lives, but to ask every person in this week's corridor to consciously resist that normalization. Treat Tuesday's tornado threat with the same urgency you brought to Saturday's, even if Saturday's storms came and went without hitting your specific community. Because Tuesdays are not the same storms. They are the most dangerous day of the sequence. The hail problem this week is going to be significant, and it is going to compound across multiple days in a specific way that I want to make sure agricultural communities understand before the week begins. Saturday is already being flagged for baseball-sized hail over parts of the high plains, which can injure livestock and cause significant vehicle and property damage. By Sunday and through Tuesday, the hail-producing environment intensifies as the Kp values build and the upper-level temperatures drop beneath the approaching troughs. In the easy dawn, strongest supercell cores on Sunday through Tuesday, 2-inch to potentially softball-sized hail is possible. For farmers and ranchers in central Oklahoma, south central Kansas, and north Texas, who are in the middle of calving season and spring planting, this is not abstract property damage. This is livestock at acute risk of injury and death from large hail falling on pastures with no cover available. This is freshly planted seed corn and cotton that gets destroyed in the field by hail the size of apples. This is the kind of accumulated agricultural damage that can define a farming season even if every individual farm makes it through the tornado and flooding threats intact. The agricultural community in this week's corridor needs to be thinking specifically about what can be moved, what can be covered, what decisions need to be made before Saturday's first hail event, rather than after Tuesday's last one. Now I want to address the electrical infrastructure problem directly, because it is the glue that holds everything else together, and when it fails, every other problem gets exponentially worse. This week's storm sequence is going to produce widespread power outages across a broad geographic area through a combination of mechanisms. Wind damage from squall-line bow echoes pushing through the overnight hours with gusts of 70 to 90 miles per hour in the most intense bowing segments. Tornado damage, taking down transmission. Infrastructure along individual storm tracks. Large tree limbs saturated by week-long rainfall that fall onto lines that were already stressed by the previous events. And the sheer volume of damage reports that overwhelm utility restoration crews, who are working across too many counties and too many states simultaneously to prioritize efficiently. PowerOutage.us is almost certainly going to be showing significant customer counts across multiple states simultaneously by Monday and Tuesday of this week. And in the context of summer-like temperatures reaching the low to mid-80s and even low 90s that the WPC has described arriving by midweek, temperatures that are unseasonably warm for mid-April, extended power outages become a heat emergency rather than an inconvenience. Elderly residents who cannot regulate their body temperature in 90-degree heat without air conditioning, individuals on home oxygen and CPAP machines and dialysis equipment, families with infants. I'm asking every person watching this video who has a vulnerable neighbor, a family member on powered medical equipment, or an elderly person living alone in the path of this week's storms to make a specific phone call today, not later, this week, today. Make sure that person has a plan. Make sure they know where to go if their power goes out and the temperature climbs. Make sure they have a way to reach emergency services that does not depend on a charged cell phone or a Wi-Fi connection. The serious problems this week creates are not just physical, they are social. They are about who has the resources and the networks to get through a difficult week, and who gets left isolated and vulnerable when those systems fail. Let me close with the most specific and most actionable set of requests I can make, because this video is not useful if it just generates anxiety without generating preparation. First, if you're in the corridor from Texas through Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, or Michigan, stock enough food and water for 5 days right now before Saturday, because a 5-day supply accounts for the full length of this storm sequence. Second, charge every device in your home tonight and keep them charged throughout the week, not just before the peak storm days. Third, locate and walk through your shelter today, and accept that you may need to use it multiple times across multiple days this week, not as a one-time event, but as a repeated practice. Fourth, set up y'all call before Saturday. Please, the overnight windows in this sequence, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, are when people are asleep, and when warnings are going to be issued for their GPS coordinates, and when a direct phone call to their number is the only thing that is going to cut through sleep mode and do not disturb with the urgency this environment demands. $14.95 for a full year of protection. The link is in the description of this video. 5 minutes of your time today could be the most important 5 minutes of your entire week. Fifth, check on your vulnerable neighbors before Saturday and make a commitment to check on them every day throughout the active storm period. Sixth, share this video with every person you know in the affected corridor, not because this channel needs the views, but because there are people in the path of this week's storms who have not seen a single forecast and who deserve to know what is coming in time to do something about it. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and I will see y'all in the live stream the moment the first storms of this sequence initiate. Stay safe out there. I love every single one of you.